Good evening, everyone. Tonight I want to tell you about an organ inside your head that you almost certainly know nothing about. It's the size of a grain of rice. It weighs less than 1/10 of a gram. It sits exactly in the geometric center of your brain, not off to the side, not near the surface, but right in the middle, as if it were placed there deliberately. And here is what makes it strange. When scientists first examined this organ under a microscope, what they found inside it looked almost exactly like the structure of a human eye. Not metaphorically. Structurally. The cells in this organ contain the same kind of photoreceptors that you find in the retina. They are built, on a cellular level, to detect light. Except this organ is inside your skull, surrounded by bone and brain tissue, with no direct access to light whatsoever. The organ is called the pineal gland. In Chinese, it's the pinecone body, named for its distinctive shape. And if you've ever heard the phrase, the third eye, this is what people are actually referring to. Not a mystical concept. A physical organ. One that you have, right now, at the center of your brain. Let me tell you what it actually does. And then I'll tell you what ancient civilizations believed it could do. And then I'll tell you why, once you understand both of those things, you start to feel like maybe the ancients knew something we forgot. The pineal gland's primary known function is producing melatonin. You may have heard of melatonin, it's sold as a sleep supplement all over the world. In Chinese pharmacies, it was marketed for years under the brand name. The science behind it is real. Melatonin is the hormone that regulates your biological clock. When darkness falls, your pineal gland begins secreting it into your bloodstream. Melatonin tells your body, it's night. Time to sleep. Time to repair. Time to do the maintenance that only happens in darkness. When light returns, melatonin production shuts off. Your body knows to wake up. The cycle repeats every single day of your life, coordinated entirely by this tiny organ in the center of your brain. This matters more than it might sound. Researchers who removed the pineal gland from laboratory animals found something alarming: the animals aged significantly faster. Their immune systems weakened. They became more susceptible to tumors and cancers. Removing this small organ did not simply disrupt sleep, it seemed to accelerate the entire process of physical decline. Other studies found that melatonin has potent antioxidant effects. It neutralizes the kind of cellular damage that accumulates over a lifetime and contributes to aging. The pineal gland is not just a sleep switch. It is, based on current evidence, one of the body's primary anti-aging systems. And it operates invisibly, automatically, every night, as long as you give it the conditions it needs to work. Here's where it gets complicated. The primary condition the pineal gland needs to produce melatonin is darkness. Real darkness. Not dim light, darkness. Your pineal gland responds to the full spectrum of light, but it is particularly sensitive to blue light, the same frequency emitted by LED screens, smartphones, computer monitors, and modern fluorescent lighting. When blue light hits your retinas, even at relatively low intensity, it sends a signal to the pineal gland: it's still daytime. Hold the melatonin. This means that anyone who spends their evenings under LED lighting or looking at a screen, which is almost everyone, almost every night, is sending their pineal gland the wrong signal for hours before sleep. The gland suppresses melatonin production. The biological clock gets confused. Sleep quality degrades. The nightly repair and restoration cycle gets disrupted, repeatedly, over years and decades. The ancient Romans who read by candlelight before bed were not depriving themselves. Candle flames emit almost no blue light. Their pineal glands receive the correct signal: darkness is coming. Begin the cycle. The modern person staring at a phone at midnight is disrupting a system that took hundreds of millions of years to evolve. That's what the pineal gland does. That's what science knows. But this organ was known to ancient civilizations thousands of years before any of this science existed. And what they believed about it goes much, much further than melatonin. I want to push on the science a bit more, because I think it's more surprising than most people realize. The standard explanation for the pineal gland's photoreceptor structure is evolutionary. Our distant vertebrate ancestors, fish, amphibians, early reptiles, had a pineal gland that was not buried inside the skull. It sat close to the surface of the skull, covered only by a thin layer of translucent skin. In some lizards, this is still the case. If you look at a tuatara, a reptile native to New Zealand that has changed almost nothing in 200 million years, you can actually see the pineal gland as a small pale spot on top of its head. It directly detects sunlight. It is, unambiguously, a third eye. As vertebrates evolved more complex skulls, the pineal gland migrated inward. It became buried. The direct light access was lost. But the cellular structure, the photoreceptors, remained. The organ that was once literally a third eye became enclosed in bone, retained its eye-like cellular architecture, and adapted to receive light information indirectly, through neural signals from the eyes rather than directly from the sun. This is not controversial. This is standard vertebrate biology. The pineal gland is, in evolutionary terms, a third eye that got buried inside the skull. Not metaphorically. Literally. The fact that every ancient human culture independently identified the pineal gland as a third eye before any of this evolutionary biology was known, before the microscopy that revealed the photoreceptors, is either a remarkable coincidence or evidence that ancient people, through direct experimental investigation of consciousness, arrived at a truth that biology only confirmed thousands of years later. I find this genuinely extraordinary. And here is one more detail I want to give you. The pineal gland does not just produce melatonin. In the 1990s, a pharmacologist named Rick Strassman conducted a series of clinical studies on a molecule called dimethyltryptamine, or DMT. DMT is produced naturally in the human body. It is present in trace amounts in blood and urine. And in the pineal gland, researchers have found both the enzymes needed to synthesize it and evidence of its presence in pineal tissue. DMT, when administered in research settings, consistently produces experiences that subjects describe as contact with other dimensions, encounters with entities, and a quality of reality that feels more real than ordinary waking life. These experiences are remarkably consistent across subjects with no prior knowledge of each other's reports. Strassman called DMT the spirit molecule. His hypothesis was that the pineal gland, under certain conditions, near death, deep meditation, REM sleep, produces DMT in quantities sufficient to trigger these experiences. This would explain near-death experiences. It might explain certain mystical states. It might explain what children see before calcification closes the gland down. This hypothesis is not proven. The research is ongoing and contested. But the molecule is real. The enzymes for its synthesis are present in the pineal gland. The experiences it produces are remarkably consistent across thousands of documented cases. And the pineal gland, buried in the center of the skull, shaped like a pinecone, containing the cells of a third eye, is where the body appears to concentrate it. The ancients were pointing at something. I am increasingly convinced they knew what it was. Let me show you something. In 2600 BC, in ancient Sumer, the civilization in what is now Iraq that is widely considered the first complex human civilization, artists carved massive stone reliefs showing their gods. These reliefs have survived thousands of years and now sit in museums around the world. And if you look carefully at what the Sumerian gods are holding in their hands, the sacred objects carried by these divine beings, they are holding pine cones. Not stylized cones. Not abstract symbols. Detailed, realistic pine cones, carried with both hands extended, as if offering them to the viewer. Why would a civilization that existed for 1,600 years ago carve their gods holding pine cones? The pine cone was not a food source. It was not a tool. It had no obvious practical value as a religious symbol. Unless they understood something. Unless the pinecone shape meant something specific to them, something that we, looking at these carvings in a museum, have forgotten. Move forward a few thousand years to ancient Egypt. The Eye of Horus is one of the most recognizable symbols in all of human history. It appears on tombs, temples, jewelry, and the currency of countries that don't even have any connection to ancient Egypt. You've seen it. It's an eye inside a triangle or pyramid. Neuroscientists who have examined the structure of the human brain have pointed out something remarkable. The cross-section of the human brain, when viewed from the side at a specific angle, produces a shape that is almost identical to the Eye of Horus. The curve of the brain stem, the position of the thalamus, the visual cortex at the back. When you map these onto the Eye of Horus symbol, the correspondences are precise enough that many researchers believe the ancient Egyptians were depicting, in stylized form, the internal structure of the human brain, with the pineal gland at the center. The all-seeing Eye of Horus may literally be the pineal gland. Now look at the $1 bill. On the back, you'll see the pyramid with the eye above it. This is one of the most analyzed symbols in modern conspiracy culture. People argue about whether it represents the Illuminati, the Freemasons, the New World Order, divine surveillance. But very few people ask the first question: what is the eye supposed to be? The Freemasons, who influenced the design of the American dollar, had a concept they called the third eye, an eye of spiritual perception that transcended ordinary sight and could, in theory, perceive truth directly. This was not a novel Freemasonic invention. It was inherited from older traditions. The eye on the pyramid is the all-seeing eye, the organ of total perception, placed above the pyramid of human achievement as a reminder that there is a form of seeing that goes beyond ordinary vision. Go to Rome. In the Vatican, the center of the Catholic Church, the institution that governs the religious lives of over 1 billion people, there is a large courtyard called the Cortile della Pigna. The Pigna, which means pinecone. The centerpiece of this courtyard is a massive bronze pinecone sculpture, 4 meters tall. It has been in the Vatican since ancient Roman times. The Vatican kept it. It's still there. The Catholic Church, which is not known for preserving random objects without theological significance, has maintained this enormous pinecone as one of its most prominent public sculptures for 2,000 years. And in Hindu and Buddhist traditions, the third eye is not metaphorical at all. Shiva, one of the principal deities of Hinduism, is depicted with a literal third eye in the center of his forehead. When Shiva opens this eye, the power that comes out is so great it can incinerate reality itself. The third eye of Shiva is the eye of pure consciousness, of perception unclouded by the limitations of ordinary mind. Buddhist monks are depicted with the urna, a dot or mark at the center of the forehead, between the eyebrows, precisely over the location of the pineal gland inside the skull. Now here is the question. Sumerian civilization, Egyptian civilization, Roman civilization, Hindu civilization, Buddhist tradition, Freemasonry. These cultures had almost no contact with each other across most of their histories. They developed independently, on different continents, in different languages, with different religious systems. And all of them, independently arrived at the same symbol, pointing to the same location on the human body, and called it the seat of ultimate perception. The eye that sees everything. The source of divine consciousness. The third eye. One more thing, and then I want to talk about what actually happens to children. Christmas trees. In English, the word pine tree. Pine as in pinecone. The Christmas tree tradition, which predates Christianity and was absorbed from older European winter solstice practices, centers on a conifer tree decorated with lights. The lights are placed on the tree specifically because the winter solstice is the darkest time of year, the time when the sun is furthest away and darkness is greatest. The tradition is fundamentally about light returning in darkness. The pineal gland activates in darkness to produce the hormone of rest and restoration. It is, in a sense, a light buried in darkness, a small gland that does its most important work when all other light has gone out. The connection may be coincidental, or it may be that these traditions encoded the same understanding in different symbolic languages. I will let you decide what you think. I want to spend more time on the Vatican because I think it's the most striking single piece of evidence for how seriously this knowledge was taken. The pinecone sculpture in the Vatican, the pigna, is not a decorative object that ended up in the Vatican by accident. It has documented provenance. It was originally placed in front of the Pantheon in Rome, the temple of all the gods, one of the most sacred sites in the ancient Roman world. The Pantheon, which still stands today and is one of the best preserved ancient buildings on Earth, was deliberately oriented so that its oculus, the circular opening in the dome, allows a single beam of sunlight to enter and move across the floor like a cosmic clock. The Pantheon is, among other things, a precision instrument for tracking light. In front of this temple of light stood the pinecone. When Christianity absorbed Rome's sacred sites, the pinecone was moved to the Vatican and placed in the most prominent courtyard. Not discarded. Not replaced. Moved to the center of the world's largest religious institution. The papal staff, the ferula, the ceremonial staff of the Pope himself, is topped with a pinecone. The leader of the Catholic Church carries a pinecone into the world's most important religious ceremonies. This is not obscure. It is completely visible. The pinecone is everywhere in the Vatican, for anyone willing to see it. And then there is the Freemasonry connection, which ties directly into the symbolism on the dollar bill. Freemasonry emerged in its modern form in the 17th and 18th centuries, but its practitioners claim descent from much older traditions, from the builders of Solomon's temple, from the mystery schools of ancient Egypt, from the philosophical traditions of ancient Greece. Whatever the accuracy of those claims about lineage, the content of Freemasonic symbolism is unmistakably drawn from the same sources as the pineal gland tradition. The first degree of Freemasonry teaches about the physical and material world. The second degree about the mind. The third degree, a Master Mason, is specifically concerned with death, resurrection, and what Masons call the true word or the secret name, which represents direct knowledge of the divine. This progression from physical to mental to spiritual, from body to mind to the eye that transcends both, mirrors exactly the progression of the pineal gland tradition. The eye on the pyramid is specifically placed above the apex of human achievement, above the completed pyramid, as if to say, all of human civilization, all its monuments and institutions and knowledge systems, points upward toward something beyond itself. Toward a mode of perception that sees more than human eyes can see. And the pyramid has 13 levels. The number 13 in esoteric tradition is associated with transformation, with a movement from one state to another. The 12 signs of the zodiac plus 1. The 12 apostles plus Christ. In each case, the 13th element is the one that changes the nature of the other 12. The eye is the 13th element. The perception that transforms all the knowledge beneath it. I am not telling you to believe in Freemasonic doctrine. I am telling you that these symbols encode a consistent, coherent body of knowledge about a specific organ in the human body, and that this knowledge runs unbroken from Sumer to Egypt to Rome to the founding documents of the United States of America. It was never hidden. It was always in plain sight. You just needed the right information to see what you were looking at. Here's something that almost every parent has experienced, and almost no one talks about directly. A young child, 3 years old, 4 years old, somewhere in that range, starts talking about someone who isn't there. Someone the parents cannot see. The child describes this person with specific details. They might be afraid of this person, or comfortable with them, or simply matter-of-fact about their presence. The parents look in the direction the child is pointing and see nothing. Sometimes this stops after a few weeks. Sometimes the child stops talking about it as they grow older, as if they have simply forgotten, or as if whatever they were perceiving has faded. There is a scientific explanation for this that is distinct from any supernatural interpretation. And it involves the pineal gland. The pineal gland calcifies. This is a well-documented medical phenomenon. Starting in childhood and continuing through adolescence, the gland gradually accumulates calcium deposits. By adulthood, the pineal gland is significantly calcified in most people, detectable on X-rays, visible in brain scans. It doesn't stop functioning entirely, but its sensitivity and output are reduced compared to what they were in early childhood. The calcification process is most active between ages 7 and 12, though it begins earlier and continues throughout life. Before this calcification takes hold, in children under 7, the pineal gland is at its most active, its most sensitive, its most chemically potent. This is the period when children report seeing things adults cannot see. Whether you interpret this as the pineal gland enabling genuine extrasensory perception, or as the extremely active pineal gland of young children producing unusual neurochemical states that generate visual and experimental phenomena, the correlation exists. The children most likely to report seeing unexplained presences are the children with the least calcified pineal glands. As the gland calcifies, these experiences stop. The child grows up. The seeing fades. And the adult cannot remember, with any clarity, what it was they were once perceiving. I have heard accounts of children who could describe deceased relatives they had never met, with accurate physical details no one had told them. Children who knew things about family history that no one had discussed in their presence. Children who accurately described events happening at a distance, a grandparent's illness, a car accident involving someone they knew, before being told. I am not claiming these accounts prove supernatural perception. I am saying they are documented, they cluster in the age range before pineal calcification, and they stop, reliably, once calcification is established. Something changes when the pineal gland calcifies. What that something is, whether it is a genuine perceptual faculty being closed off, or a neurochemical state of heightened sensitivity being gradually reduced, I cannot tell you with certainty. But the correlation is too consistent to dismiss. Now, what about adults who claim to have enhanced sensitivity? What about the documented cases of adults who seem to perceive things beyond ordinary explanation? There was an Italian woman who was considered by Italian police to have a genuine psychic faculty. She had worked, reportedly, on multiple missing persons cases. In one documented account, she was shown photographs of a missing person and a crime scene and proceeded to describe the location where the person's body could be found, describing the physical landscape in detail, the type of structure nearby, the approximate terrain. Police, following her description, found the body in the location she described. The police were clear in their statements, only the perpetrator could have known that location. I am not presenting this as proof of the supernatural. I am presenting it as a documented report of something that happened, that has not been fully explained. There was also a Russian woman who became notable for reportedly being able to perceive her environment with her eyes completely covered. In controlled conditions, with verified blindfolds, she could navigate spaces, read text, and identify objects. She was tested multiple times by researchers who found no evidence of fraud, and no physical explanation for what she appeared to be doing. She attributed it to her pineal gland. She described it as seeing with the center of her forehead rather than with her eyes. And then there are the more subtle, more common reports. People whose intuition is calibrated to a degree that seems to exceed chance. People who know, before being told, that something has happened to someone they love. People who sense danger before it arrives, who feel the emotional state of others with unusual accuracy. If the pineal gland is a photoreceptor, if it is, at some fundamental level, a sensory organ that has been mostly switched off by calcification and modern lifestyle, then the question of what it might perceive, at full activation, is genuinely open. Light. Electromagnetic fields. The subtle energetic states of other living beings. The physical precursors of events before they become perceptible to ordinary senses. I don't know. And I want to be honest with you about that. I don't know. But the fact that the oldest civilizations on Earth, without any communication with each other, all identified this exact organ as the seat of divine perception, that fact makes me reluctant to dismiss the question too quickly. I want to be honest about the most difficult part of this topic. The stories I described, the Italian woman who helped police find a body, the Russian woman who could see without eyes, the children who describe things they shouldn't know, these stories have a specific quality that makes them difficult to engage with rationally. On one hand, if you dismiss them entirely, you are making a strong claim that all documented accounts of anomalous perception are either fraud, coincidence, or misremembering. That's possible. But it's a strong claim that requires you to explain away a significant amount of testimony from people including law enforcement officers, clinical researchers, and independent witnesses. On the other hand, if you accept them uncritically, you are accepting claims for which the mechanism is unknown and the evidence is largely anecdotal. I want to offer a third position. These phenomena, if real, are probably not supernatural. Supernatural implies something outside nature. What I think is more likely, if any of this is real, is that human perception has capacities that mainstream science has not yet characterized. That the nervous system can detect information through channels that current physics doesn't fully explain, but that are nonetheless physical, nonetheless measurable in principle, and nonetheless natural. The history of science is full of phenomena that were dismissed as impossible before their mechanisms were understood. Electromagnetic radiation was impossible before Maxwell. Quantum entanglement was dismissed as absurd by Einstein. Prion diseases were rejected for decades because the accepted model said proteins couldn't transmit information without DNA. In each case, the phenomenon was real before the mechanism was understood. The mechanism being unknown did not mean the phenomenon didn't exist. The people who seem to have anomalous perceptual abilities tend to share certain characteristics. They tend to be unusually calm under ordinary conditions. They tend to have practiced some form of sustained meditative or contemplative practice. They tend to describe their perceptions as coming from a different mode of knowing than rational analysis, a knowing that feels direct, immediate, and arrives fully formed rather than being constructed by thinking. This description matches what contemplative traditions describe as the opening of the third eye almost exactly. And here is the thing about children. Children under 7 have not yet been fully socialized into the consensus of what is and is not perceivable. They have not yet learned to dismiss experiences that adults around them cannot verify. Their nervous systems are more plastic. Their pineal glands are uncalcified. And they report, with a matter-of-fact consistency that is different from the dramatic claims of adult psychics, simply seeing things. Describing things. As if what they are perceiving is perfectly ordinary, and the strange part is that the adults cannot see it. The pediatric literature contains case after case of young children accurately describing deceased relatives, including people who died before the child was born, with physical details the child could not have been told. Some of these cases have been systematically investigated by researchers at universities including the University of Virginia, which has maintained a research program on these questions for over 50 years. I am not asking you to conclude that life after death is real, or that children have psychic powers. I am asking you to notice that something happens, consistently, in the years before pineal calcification. Something that stops when the gland calcifies. Something that has been reported across cultures and centuries and has been the subject of serious academic investigation. The pineal gland is at the center of all of it. Whatever it does it before we know enough to stop it. So the question everyone wants to ask is, can you do something about it? If modern life calcifies the pineal gland, the screens, the artificial light, the decades of disrupted melatonin cycles, is there a way to reverse that? Is there something a person could actually do? Here's what circulates online. I want to be honest about what is documented and what is not. The first category is lifestyle changes. These are the ones with the most scientific basis. Darkness. Real, complete darkness, for several hours before sleep and throughout the night. When your pineal gland gets the signal it evolved to receive, genuine night, no blue light, no screen glow, no LED strips, it produces melatonin at the levels it was designed to produce. Over time, this may restore some of the gland's natural rhythm. Sunlight in the morning, directly after waking. This recalibrates the biological clock. Bright morning light tells the pineal gland that the day has started, which allows it to know with more precision when the day has ended. There are also claims about avoiding fluoride, which is found in most municipal water supplies and commercial toothpaste. The calcification of the pineal gland is a real phenomenon, and fluoride has been identified in research as one substance that accumulates specifically in pineal tissue at relatively high concentrations. The extent to which this contributes to functional calcification is debated among scientists. But the fluoride content of the pineal gland is not debated, it's documented. The second category is meditation. Specifically, focused meditation in darkness, with attention directed to the center of the forehead, to the location of the pineal gland inside the skull. Practitioners describe a progressive experience over weeks and months, first a sense of pressure at that location, then warmth, then in some cases visual phenomena, light, color, geometric patterns, that arise even in complete darkness with eyes closed. The scientific explanation would be that prolonged focused attention on a brain region can increase blood flow and neural activation in that area. Whether this constitutes opening the third eye in the traditional sense, or simply activating a dormant region of the brain, may be a distinction without a practical difference. The third category is acoustic. There are specific sound frequencies, often called binaural beats, that are claimed to stimulate the pineal gland. Binaural beats work by playing a slightly different frequency in each ear, creating a perceived beat frequency in the brain that corresponds to the difference between the two tones. Certain frequencies are associated with specific brainwave states, delta for deep sleep, theta for the hypnagogic state between waking and sleeping, gamma for heightened perception and focus. Practitioners who use binaural beats for pineal activation typically work in the theta and gamma ranges, in darkness, during the transition period between waking and sleep, the time when the pineal gland is naturally most active. I know someone who tried this consistently. For 2 months, every night, the same protocol, the darkness, headphones, specific frequencies. At the end of 2 months, they described their senses as sharpened in ways that were difficult to explain. The smell of things was more present. Sounds registered more distinctly. Dreams became more vivid and easier to remember. Their intuition about people and situations felt more accurate. These effects are hard to measure. They could be attributable to simply paying consistent attention to your body for 2 months. They could be a placebo. They could be something else. But here is what I find worth thinking about. Across every ancient tradition, the opening of the third eye was never described as a single event. It was never described as something that happened once, dramatically, and then the person was transformed. It was always described as a gradual process. A cultivation. Something that required daily practice over months and years. Something that required, first and foremost, the quieting of the ordinary noise of daily life, the ambitions, the anxieties, the constant flood of stimulation, and the creation of space for a more subtle form of perception to emerge. The Vedic tradition called it tapas, the heat of sustained spiritual practice. The Buddhist tradition called it samadhi, concentrated awareness sustained over time. The Sufi tradition called it kashf, the unveiling, which implied that what was being revealed had always been present, just covered over. The pineal gland does not need to be created or acquired. You already have it. It is already there, at the center of your skull, the size of a grain of rice, shaped like a pinecone, built to detect light in ways that science does not fully understand. The question is whether you are giving it what it needs. If you lie in complete darkness tonight, in genuine quiet, and place your attention at the center of your forehead, not forcing anything, not expecting anything, just noticing, you may notice something. A warmth. A faint pressure. A sense of presence that isn't quite vision and isn't quite thought, but is something in between. That may be nothing. Or it may be the organ that every ancient civilization believed was the portal to something larger, very quietly doing what it has always been designed to do. The Sumerians knew about it. The Egyptians built a symbol for it that ended up on the most widely circulated currency in human history. The Vatican kept a 4-meter bronze pinecone in its courtyard for 2,000 years. The Hindus built it into the iconography of their highest deity. The Buddhists marked its location on the faces of their enlightened figures with a dot between the brows. All of them pointing to the same place. The rice grain-sized organ at the center of your skull. Good night. And maybe, tonight, try the dark. Let me tell you what I find most compelling about the opening the third eye question, and then I'll give you what I think is actually worth trying. The most compelling thing is this: the negative case is easy to make. The calcification of the pineal gland is real. The effects of disrupted melatonin cycles on health, mood, and cognition are well documented. The prevalence of sleep disorders, anxiety, and depression in modern societies that use artificial lighting extensively is unprecedented in human history. Something about the way we live now is disrupting this system. That part requires no leap of faith. It's established science. So the minimum version of what I'm describing tonight requires no belief in the supernatural at all. It just requires taking seriously the possibility that an organ your body clearly considers important enough to place at the geometric center of your brain has been gradually compromised by your lifestyle, and that there might be value in treating it better. That version of the story is: turn off your screens at night. Sleep in genuine darkness. Spend time outside in morning sunlight. Let your biological clock reset. Give the pineal gland the conditions it evolved to work in. The effects of doing this consistently, documented in sleep research, in chronobiology, in studies of circadian rhythm disruption, include better sleep, stronger immune function, more stable mood, sharper cognition, and potentially slower cellular aging. These are not small effects. They are, in aggregate, among the highest return lifestyle changes a person can make. The minimum version is already worth doing. The extended version, the possibility that this gland, functioning at its full capacity, enables forms of perception that aren't available to most adults in modern society, I cannot confirm. But I also cannot dismiss it. And I think it is worth holding open as a possibility, not as a certainty. There is something about human consciousness that we do not fully understand. The relationship between the brain and awareness, between neural activity and subjective experience, remains one of the deepest unsolved problems in science. The pineal gland, with its anomalous placement, its eye-like cellular structure, its unique neurochemistry including DMT, and its universal presence in every spiritual and mystical tradition that has ever existed, sits at the center of this unsolved problem. The fact that the ancients called it the third eye, and that evolutionary biology confirmed it was literally once a third eye, and that its cells still contain photoreceptors, and that its main hormone is the one your body produces in darkness, all of this together is not coincidence in my view. It is a pointer. An arrow pointing at something that human beings have known about, in various ways, for as long as we have had writing and stone cutting and the ability to leave marks for each other across time. What you do with the pointer is up to you. But tonight, if you're willing to try, close the screens an hour early. Sit in actual darkness for a few minutes. Put your attention at the center of your forehead, where the pineal gland is, and just notice what's there. Don't force anything. Don't expect anything dramatic. Just give it darkness. Give it quiet. Give it what it was designed for. And see what it does. The Sumerians did this 4,600 years ago. The Egyptians did it. The monks in the Himalayan caves did it for months at a time. The Freemasons who designed the symbolism on your dollar bill did it. Every mystical tradition that has ever existed has pointed at this practice, this organ, this specific quality of attention in darkness. You have the same organ they did. In the same location. Capable, potentially, of the same things. The only question is whether you'll give it a chance to show you. Good night. Turn off your screen a little early tonight. And in the dark, just before you sleep, place your attention at the center of your forehead. And listen. One more thing. The aging research on the pineal gland is something I keep coming back to. The animals whose pineal glands were removed aged faster. The melatonin produced by a healthy pineal gland has genuine anti-aging effects at the cellular level. There are researchers who believe that the slow decline of pineal function, which happens to all of us as the gland calcifies through adulthood, is not incidental to the aging process, but central to it. If that's true, then everything the ancients claimed about the third eye being the seat of vitality, the source of longevity, the key to a life lived at full capacity, all of that maps directly onto something biology is beginning to confirm. The small organ at the center of your skull. Take care of it tonight.